I love to say wise things by other people. Hearing Tola, peace, this is by Pablo Neruda. Peace goes into the making of a poet as flour goes into the making of bread. Poetry is an act of peace. And another one for you, Tola, but for everybody. And I think all poets do this to some degree. This is by the British writer John Berger. Poems, regardless of any outcome, cross the battlefields, tending the wounded, listening to the wild monologues of the triumphant or fearful. They bring a kind of peace, not by anesthesia or easy reassurance, but by recognition and the promise that what has been experienced cannot disappear as if it had never been. The promise is that language has acknowledged, has given shelter to the experience which demanded, which cried out. And C, and Tola, and hopefully me. The more clearly we can focus our attention on the wonders and realities of the universe about us, the less taste we shall have for destruction. And this is by Rachel Carson. And one more, and then I'll launch into my first poem. This one is by Anne Lamott. Laughter really is carbonated holiness. It helps us breathe again and again, and gives us back to ourselves, and this gives us faith in life and each other. So I'm going to begin with a poem that uses a word that one of my writing teachers told me to never use because it has many syllables. And my writing teacher told me, this was in college, stick with the Anglo-Saxon words. So I'm sorry, I won't name you. You're no longer on this earth anyway. But I am grateful for many other things you taught me. When you're caught in the net of ineptitude, kissed with a kiss that isn't the kiss you hoped for. I've got to say, this was a very long time ago. When I was just starting the world. Okay, sorry. When you're caught in the net of ineptitude, kissed with the kiss that isn't the kiss you hoped for, lips unmoving as fish lined up on ice, eyes wide open and blankly staring, chin a back and forth handsaw hinged at the jaw, ear to ear, lips holding steady and pressed hard on yours, tempting as chopped octopus, robbed of all its famed intelligence. You who have waited so long for this, how can you say to him, no, this is not the meal all those months of flirting promised? But damned if his hands don't know precisely how to cut things short and move on. That was such fun to write. Okay, now I've somehow got this out of order. Okay. Poems can do many, many things. And one thing that they do is offer consolation, or as John Burgess said, to speak that which has happened as though, not to let it go as though it had never happened at all. And I think a lot of poems, when we write about our own griefs or our own losses or our own fears, we're acknowledging that all of us share those feelings too, and we can find ourselves sometimes in each other's poems. And one of my hopes is that my poems can do that. One more quotation, and this one comes directly person to person. I had the great fortune as a very young 22-year-old in graduate school at the U of O to be asked by the Eugene Register Guard, which was once a very functional paper, to interview the great poet, the British poet W.H. Auden, the day after he gave a reading at the U of O. And the one thing of many wonderful things, the one thing that really stuck with me, he said, I write to help people enjoy life more or endure it better. And so I'm structuring my reading around joy and delight, wonder, those good things, and then also the hard things, because we need the lightness to help us through the dark. And then I'm going to return to lightness. Some Words to Toss Your Direction is a poem that I wrote many years ago, and I think I might have read it in one of the readings of the last few years. It's written for a friend when we were both new mothers and had no idea what we were doing. Well, she had a better idea than I did, but I was also learning to keep house and all that stuff. Some words to toss your direction. Call if the going gets rough, and always the promise, I will. This ritual has gone on for years, and still, in these everyday waters that keep on rising over our heads, one or the other keeps floundering, one or the other keeps watch. Twice down, never a third, or the cry for rescue. This distance, perhaps the way of all balance. No need for us both to go down, and still the longing. One word of knowing someone knows. Tossed out without a line to pull us back in, without a thought to consequence. One bright rescue, helping us want to go on. As some of you may know, my late husband, Ralph Salisbury, the poet and fiction writer, memoirist, died 5 years ago. And I have a number of poems some of you have heard, but here's one I don't think you have, and it's very short. Booting Up, which is a computer term, right? Every morning for months it happens, having turned from my screen to pour a cup of coffee or something else useful to fill the minute before your smile opens my homepage. The jolt of remembering you forever gone from this visible earth, and me behaving as though you were still in the next room. A poem for my friends Britta and Klaus Putjenter, begun many years ago when the four of us rented a Forest Service cabin above Summer Lake on at the top of an escarpment called Winter Ridge. And there was a forest all around us. It's no longer there. It burned up in a forest fire not long after we'd been there. And we rented this Forest Service cabin. Ralph and I had the cabin, they had a tent. Remembering Winter Ridge. Dark, dark, the forest around us. And dark, the great basin, hundreds of feet below. But over our heads, the four of us, flat on our backs, on the deck of that rented Forest Service lookout, far from ambient light, veil upon veil of brilliance, soon to be streaked with meteors heading our way, in predictably wild abandon, as they're said to do every August. But had we learned in which part of the sky to look? No matter. Morning brought a blaze of vastness. Faint outlines of mountains a good 3 hours drive away. And laughter at the foot of our deck, the stick of butter Chipmunk stole from Klaus and Britta's tent. And now, this hospice room, none of us dreamed was coming. So good had Britta been at keeping vagabond cells at bay. And now, an incredulity vaster than any desert or sky. On its way, that moment when breath streaks unseen across the whole of creation and is gone. I'm going to change the place and the time to a poem in my very first book, which was titled Moving the House. And it's something that Ralph and I actually did. We couldn't afford a real finished house. So at that time we had a 10-month-old baby and almost nothing in the bank. And we found this house that McDonald's Hamburgers was selling. This was 1972. They were selling it to build a parking lot. They bought it from some old people who had lived there before, and the old people moved out, and they took everything with them, even the light fixtures, even the baseboard heaters. They took everything. And we bought it for $20, moved it across town. This is the 1970s, though, you know. That was, McDonald's basically gave it to us, and we worked on it for years, and Ralph rewired the whole thing before we could actually get the light fixtures turned on. The lights turned on and the heat turned on, and it was November and it was snowing when the electric crew came out and gave us electricity. And I was a new mom, and she's 10 months old when we moved it. And she couldn't crawl there for a while until we got the floor cleaned up, because we had carried all the lumber over with us, the rafters, we had to take off the roof. So this one was titled Starting from Scratch. Yeah, and I was also learning how to, not just how to be a mom, but how to be a neighbor, how to keep a house, how to do everything that you need to do when you start out, starting from scratch. To begin with, none of your neighbors began here. Everyone moved in years before you moved into a pattern you found yourself part of before you intended. Flowers, fences, attention to the details your mother always took care of. Duller than film on dishes, it was always your job to wipe. Nobody spoke about courage. Nobody said you could choose this life. It happened. It didn't. The fact you could choose to remain would become what's yours to control. Hours of sleeping and waking, meals, the home you need to go out in the world from, neighborhood customs you know you can count on. Recipes, grapes exchanged for zucchini. The garden someone will know when to plant. The book you suggest. The pattern of limits no one has asked for. Told over coffee. lives like yours you could have become starting from scratch. Each day, the way you will live before what comes next. Garrison Keillor liked that one. Read it on the Writer's Almanac once. I was so happy. And that poem turned out to be of use. You know, like what Auden said, he wants his poems to help people enjoy life more or endure it better. Somebody wrote to me, maybe 15, 20 years after my first book was published, and she said she had carried this poem in her purse, and now she wanted to see the rest of my poems. It was of use, and I didn't know at the time that that could happen, so anyway. Knowing someone knows, and joy helping us through the hard times. So here is a poem written about something joyful and wonderful that happened along the the Willamette River. And I'm actually paraphrasing and trying to capture the voice of my friend Linda Sage, who is here today. I'm reading it for her and her late husband, Martin. She had seen this event along the river, and she came and told me about it. And I'm trying to get her enthusiasm, but I don't think she said, "Holy cow." Sorry, but I'm trying to capture that. Because she was very, very happy about that. What they saw on their weekly river walk, taking turns pushing his chair. First to snare their attention was Hawk, hovering, fluttering, just over water's smooth skin. And then the distraction, mallard from nearby delta ponds, for some unknown reason, quacking close at their heels, so that when at last they turned back to the river, Hawk was now high in the air, darting around as hawks are not wont to do. And why? Just ahead of Hawk was sped nimble osprey, breakdancing solo with big fish in its talons. Holy cow, Hawk with its speed behind osprey's agility, dodging, circling, 5 minutes or more it must have been, and then out of proverbial nowhere, bald eagle sails in behind Hawk in hot pursuit of osprey with big fish in its beak. And just when it can't get any stranger, lo and behold, crow. Flaps to catch up with eagle, sailing after Hawk in hot pursuit of osprey with big fish. A scene straight out of Aesop's fables or Native American myth. Who the foolish one? Who the wise? And then fish fell. Who knows where? And there was no more story to tell. How brief that whole unpredictable sequence that plays and replays in the mind, in the sharing. How long it kept them going, my friends, flown by wonder, far from the body's ruthless, steady decline. And later, yes, later, even then. Another bird poem. Single-minded. And this is a whole different tone. Take salmon, the way it navigates ocean, river, dam, boulder, creek, hundreds of miles to spawn in the very same spot it hatched from. Take oyster catcher, somehow building baby bird comfort 30 years in a row on the same seal rock. Take swallow, returning to Capistrano, and feather-brained spotted towhee, who raises its young each year in grasses so close to the edge of the narrow dirt road, a wheel too far to the left might crush it. Take some people crossing the line between single and simple-minded, doing what they've always done, and their parents before them, supporting a leader who's rough and tough and gets by with it, leader who never lies, no matter what anyone says, or conscience, or evidence. Look, they voted for him last time. Damn it, they'll vote for him again. There's a wonderful Dada magazine that comes out of New York City, Montenot, and they have a themed anthology every year. I encourage you to look it up online. It's French, M-A-I. In English, it looks like Maintenant, Montenot. And this year, the theme is Peace Fire. So the deadline is March 15th. Pull it's out here. And a few years ago, the issue was themed Humanity, the Reboot. To dwell in 2021 is my poem. It's very short. To dwell in 2021, and I have a quotation from William Stafford. Justice will take us millions of intricate moves. To dwell in 2021 is to reassign pride to listening, realign want and need, reapproach, reassess, reassure, readdress, reaffirm, rearrange, reattempt, reacquaint, is sometimes to get very tired. Remember Atlas. The world on his shoulders was so much smaller back then. I have a few more poems to read, but I have sort of not read poems about my previous many trips to the Yucatan Peninsula and my love of snorkeling, and before it got too expensive and I got too old, scuba diving. Maybe I'll read 2 or 3 poems, because I would like to include some of these. I'm not going back this winter. The last time I went was last year, and then I went in 2020, just before the pandemic. It's changed. So instead of spending money going to Mexico for a retreat, I know there's plenty of wonder around me right here. Plenty of wonder around me. And some of the money that I would have spent on my air ticket, which is better for the planet anyway, I'm driving my Prius over the mountains to the aquarium and volunteering at the Oregon Coast Aquarium. And I'm going to read this poem for the painter Margaret Ho. We sort of met through Facebook. She's here today. Thank you for coming, Margaret. And one of the things that impressed me so much is that she was saying that the pandemic canceled her trips to Italy, or her trip to Italy, and she decided to focus on the wonders here. And I thought, yeah, that's what I'm doing too. And I had written this poem before I saw her say that, and she has had a show down at the Karen Clark Gallery, which is full of light and full of her backyard and full of things like garlic and trees. And I thought, okay, I'm here. So here's a poem titled Watering. And this also is kind of it sort of speaks to my writing habits, because my late husband Ralph and one of my mentors, William Stafford, and his son Kim Stafford, and many people in this room get up every morning and they write every morning. And I'm not a morning person. So, the poem is titled Watering. It doesn't have to be morning, I used to say, or even every day. But now it's 3 whole months at home again and nothing but aching for Mexico, where no matter the mundane tasks, an Olympus of correspondence to conquer, laundry that had to be hung during a break in the storm, I once could mount steep wooden stairs to a high-peaked loft under a palm-thatched jungle palapa roof, loft which was my sacred space. Sounds of large wings flapping unseen over my head, sacred as that one blue stained glass window over the altar, which so many years ago carried me high above every long, long sermon. Sacred, that one single chord